Hello, Breakfast Club. We've been talking a lot about here, one way and another, about the Bernie or bust thing, or about Bernie Sanders generally. I would like to explain briefly why I think the Bernie or bust movement is ill considered. Um, as was said to me when I talked about the 2012 presidential election, I don't have a dog in this race. That's right. And I'm not saying who people should vote for, anything like that, but I am trying from, I suppose, the perspective of a political science student to explain why I think the Bernie or bust movement is ill considered. Now, I'm not talking about people who strongly prefer Sanders to Clinton or who think Clinton is a bad candidate, but only those who have basically voted for Sanders and have said that if Sanders is not the nominee after the Democratic convention, they will abstain, write in Sanders, or vote for Jill Stein of the Greens. I've got an immediate problem with that, which means that um, in the result of a contested convention where the resulting candidate from the Republican Party was, by way of a freak accident caused by the spillage of toxic cleaning fluid leaking from the Keystone pipeline onto a spider that then became radioactive and bit Al Lewis, resulting in a horrendous hybrid of a natural-born American citizen and an undead Iraqi monstrosity hell-bent on the destruction of all we hold dear so that it can spread its foul children across the USA and then take over the world, or Ted Cruz, as he's known, they would still not vote for Hillary. Okay, slightly more seriously. As I understand it, the Bernie or Bust movement is fed up with having to make a choice between the smaller of two beetles, that's to say, the lesser of two weevils. See what I did there? There's a site, Revolt Against Plutocracy, which is organising the Bernie or Bust pledge, and it says on there that Bernie or Bust means not voting for the lesser of two revolting plutocrats. So, I'm going to deal with the lesser of two weevils first. I don't think anybody would say that US politics is working particularly well at the moment. I think lots of people would rather vote for somebody who is neither Democrat nor Republican. The Citizens United decision has given money a corrupting role, shall we say, influence in the process. We could all go on. As the US political system is currently set up, there will only be two serious contenders for president. There will only be two serious party groupings. In order to win, people are going to have to compete for the median voter. Why are there going to be only two serious parties? The US has single member districts with plurality voting. That's to say, each area, whether it be for the House, the Senate, or the President, has a single winner. That winner is the person who gets the most votes in the district. I know the Electoral College complicates things a bit, but the logic holds. A voter goes to the polls, presumably, to get the candidate elected who is closest to their views. So they could vote for the candidate who most closely represents them. That candidate, though, might well not win. So they have to decide whether to make a trade-off. Other voters are doing the same, and some will make the trade-off and go from their preferred party to an acceptable party that's more electable, that might win. That means at the next election, there's an even bigger mountain for the third party to climb. And so more people go for the more electable party, and so on. The presidential layer on top actually compounds that because you have effectively a single district for the entire country. There is another part to that as well, which is politicians or aspiring politicians know they can only win by coming first. They can only get a seat by coming first, and so they're going to go for one of the parties that's going to get them, that could give them a chance of winning. All of that is a brief sketch of Duverger's law. It holds very strongly in the US. Single single member districts of plurality elections tend to two-party systems. It holds strongly in the US. It holds even if people try to break that vicious cycle, like organising a campaign to vote for a third party. The most that it does is temporarily strengthen the other side. Why are parties going to go then for the median voter? Go for a moderate, quote unquote, position. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that politics can be simplified to a single axis. It's probably going to be a bell curve, who knows, but let's stand everybody in a line, with the most left-wing person standing with a foot in the Pacific at Kesiso Rocks in Washington State, and the most right-wing person with a foot in the Atlantic at Key Biscayne in Florida. Somewhere around Stockton, Kansas is the median voter. The person with half the voters to the left of them, half the voters to the right of them. Let's call them Chris. Assuming that people are going to vote for the party whose platform is closest to them, and that there are only two viable parties, Chris decides the election. Both parties want Chris's vote. And if they get Chris's vote, presumably they get everybody else on their side as well, and so they win. Obviously, it's more complicated than that, but it illustrates the principle. You can set your platform, if you like, to appeal to Terry over in Colorado, but then Chris, our median voter, is going to vote quote unquote right. And so are some people who are actually slightly to the left of Chris. You can tailor your platform to Ashley as well, who lives just outside of Memphis, Tennessee, but then the reverse happens. Chris will vote left, and some people who are to the right of Chris will vote left. So you get the both parties converging on the middle. This convergence is one of the effects of a two-party system that Anthony Downs outlines in the Economic Theory of Democracy, and it holds very strongly in the US. In other words, unless there are fundamental changes to the voting system, there are going to be two parties. It's worth mentioning that the entire structure of the US political system, the US Constitution, is to make rapid, radical change bloody difficult. You can't get it by voting just for the president. In any case, there's a bare minimum of political involvement. You also need to be voting for senators and representatives and state senators and state representatives, for local officials, but also for people within the party structure. Now, all of that is nothing new to anyone. It's worth saying, though, that what's being proposed, as I understand it, are pretty dramatic changes in the operation of at least one political party and potentially the whole political system of the US. That could well be a good thing, but it is going to take a lot of work over time. Going for Bernie, Bernie probably wouldn't win, but even if Bernie won, even if somebody like Bernie won in every single Senate and House seat up in this year in 2016, that still wouldn't be enough. This is something that takes years to do. So we're still going to have two parties and two candidates. So we have to think about the lesser of two evils. I've tried to suggest that without fundamental change, that will require a lot of work over a long time. The choice will always be a lesser of two evils. The response to this, effectively, from the Bernie or bust movement is, as I understand it, that Hillary is not substantially better than Trump, Cruz, Kasich, or any other putative Republican nominee because of her policies, because of general sleaze, and because of where her campaign gets its money. In short, the argument is that Hillary smells of poo. I don't have time to go through all the details of every position that the candidates for president have taken. I'm probably going to go over on this video anyway. I would simply ask, what are the policy differences between Clinton and Sanders, or between Clinton and Obama? How do they compare to the differences with, say, Kasich, let alone Trump or Cruz? Interesting link in the description from presidentialcandidates.insidegov.com. Now, there's been a lot of accusations and innuendo thrown at Clinton, including from some supporters of Senator Sanders. A lot of this reminds me very much of the stuff that was being thrown at her by the Republican Party when Bill Clinton was president. And Hillary was viewed as the socialist demon on his shoulder, whispering sweet nothings in his ear about healthcare reform. To read a lot of the interwebs, there is a general air of sleaze around Clinton, the Clintons. I submit that a lot of these sleaze allegations against Clinton are specious, and come from aficionados of Sanders who will use any criticism going to attack Clinton, even if it's patent nonsense like primary elections being rigged. And even if if it's doing the work of the ghosts of the Republican Party of the 1990s on funding for the campaign. One of the problems with the US political system is how much money you need, how much money is available. In order to fix it, you're going to have to operate within the system to some extent. I think the figure is 96% of the time the candidate with more money wins, and it's not. There's confounding factors there, but that means at least to some degree you have to take advantage of Citizens United, even as you try to change it. I would suggest. I do have a question here again. Did you object to Priorities USA action, super PAC supporting Obama in 2012? Have you voted for, or are you considering voting for, other candidates who have been supported by super PACs? Have you checked? Looking at the grand old party, do you really think that Clinton will not be substantially more to your liking on women's rights, LGBT rights, voting rights? Who do you think is more likely to appoint a Supreme Court justice to your taste? Here's the thing, though. Hillary does smell of poo. Everyone in politics smells of poo. Partly this is because a combination of the press and social media run around spritzing everyone with poo-sainted fragrance. Mostly, though, it's because, as Bernie says, the system isn't working properly. And part of the reason it's not working is because there's poo everywhere. In the Senate, in the House, radioactive spider poo outside Ted Cruz's office, everywhere. The point I'm making, I suppose, is that Hillary is not an evil monster who is so close to Trump or Cruz as to make the difference irrelevant. The point I'm trying to make is that it will be either the Democratic or the Republican candidate who will win the presidency. The point is that the change that the Bernie or bust movement want takes a long time, and in the meantime, you still have to make a choice. Unless and until the US Constitution changes in quite fundamental ways, the choice will remain between the lesser of two evils. And voters have to assess how lesser that evil is, while still working towards change in a manner that is likely, eventually, to have some success. In short, I think if Bernie or bust has any effect, it will be to make it easier for a conservative Republican to be elected president. If I may paraphrase Stuart Lee, Bernie or bust is like shitting your hotel bed as a protest against bad service, then realizing you now have to sleep in a shitted bed. See you next time.